All right. Yeah, that's an appropriate thing. Let's have a look. Okay, we should be back. Sorry about that. I don't know what was happening there. Oh, it's always something. It's always something, isn't it? Okay, we're just gonna completely ignore what happened there. Let's see. Ad break. Yeah, exactly. So let's continue off where we wanted to go, right? So Blazer Gamer 101 was asking which has more job opportunity, hard surface for weapons, vehicles, assets, or hero props, or an environment artist. So I mean, I'm kind of hesitant to answer that question, really, because I feel like you're trying to take a shortcut into what has the biggest opportunity. But like I was saying before, I think the best thing that you can do is just find a thing that you love and then see what job matches that the best. If you're looking at pure volume though, environment artist is going to be the biggest one, especially in AAA, because the worlds are so big now that you need a lot of environment artists for each production to actually go through the world and populate it and tell stories and all that kind of stuff, right? But if you don't care about that, then you shouldn't become an environment artist, right? Because that's not what you want to do. So, yeah. I would always focus, like, at least experiment with like what you want to do and then see what you can do on top of it. Let me check. Is my chat box broken now? God dang it. Shubaranshu. Hey, how have you been? I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Apart from the technical issues, but hey, that's all good. Is lower than the recommended bitrate. Oh, we're having some fun over here today. Let me actually see. There we go. The weed. Okay, that was easier than expected. Let me try some other stuff as well. Okay, let's see if that works better. Then YouTube stops complaining a little bit. Let's see. Okay, we'll give that a bit. Hello, Falco. Good to see you. Hello, video game development. Good to see you too. For environment art, what would you put on a portfolio like ArtStation or Instagram? What should I be focusing on? We literally just talked about that in a bit. But honestly, like if you just want to check out some of my portfolio reviews that I've done, that would be good. In short, just to repeat what we said before, we had like the little disconnect, is storytelling, small scenes that tell like a little bit of a story and that showcase that you can do like a variation in terms of like workflows, right? So usually I recommend to start out small with a singular asset and then just work on top of that and go for something that gives you more flexibility for the future. So tidables, trim sheets, all those like more modular workflows that you can use. All right, let's sit on down and get cracking for some feedback, shall we? You have a favorite game at the moment? Not really, actually. I played a little Outer Wilds. I played a little bit of Expedition 33, but not enough to let it either capture me or like it doesn't really interest me like from the get-go, you know? Like both of those games have not really grabbed me from the get-go. I think it's also because I'm just so focused on other stuff now. But yeah, I don't really have a favorite game right now. Usually I'm so specific when it comes to games that like I just really have that game that I'm really looking forward to like once every 5 years. That's about it, you know? The rest of it, I'm kind of just like floating in between. There's probably like a bunch of like really cool indie stuff that is worth playing. So for example, I'm getting close to actually completing Dredge. So that is probably the closest to my my favorite so far. But it's not, I don't know. Like it wasn't the thing that I assumed that people were talking about, you know? Has anyone played Doom: The Dark Ages? Oh, well, look at that. Well, Doom guy right there. Hell yeah. I've not played it though. I just wanted the statue. Okay, last question, and then we go into some feedback, and then the rest of the questions we can kind of weave into it, right? So, if I use brushes for Unreal Engine like Brushify pack, will it be easier for set dressing, or is that considered cheating if I put on my portfolio that I use Brushify? I don't know what Brushify does actually, because it's just... Does it scatter like assets for you as well? Or are you just talking about like foliage and all that kind of stuff? Because that's not cheating. From Joe Gard? Yeah, I've heard about it. I just never looked into it. But nothing is really considered cheating. So, okay, let me generalize this a bit, right? Like, nothing is really considered cheating unless you're cheating yourself. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, if let's say, okay, you're saying it creates like trees and mountains and all that kind of stuff, right? Like foliage. Yeah, isn't it just like a complex, like multi-layered material? Let's take that as an example, right? Well, let's say you want to become like a material artist and you love making materials and you love doing shader work inside of Unreal, right? And then you use a Brushify pack, then that is basically ripping yourself from your own work, right? Because that's the stuff that you want to do. So another example could be, okay, I have this beautiful scene and the focal point, I'm just going to use Megascans for that and I'm going to do the rest of it. Then that defeats the purpose again, right? Because you should swap it around where the stuff that is the focal point of the scene should be done by yourself, and then the rest of it you can justify that easier by just having something else. So in general, that's the way that I would look at things. So if you don't want to do that thing that tool specifically does, then it doesn't matter, right? Okay, let's have a look at some feedback, shall we? Let me open up Discord. Let's have a look. Let's see. Yeah, let's start with the one that's on the screen from Darren. We had a lot of chit chat for today. I love it, love it. So I did a one thing that I'm trying to do with these sessions now is I'm trying to do a little bit more prep. So as you can tell, I have like a bunch of images that I kind of prepared for this stream already. But let's see what Darren wants to ask about, right? So the two questions here for today are, should I put the black plane behind the windows or should I make the glass material dirty and not translucent? So this is talking about like just the windows, right? I mean, it needs something, right? So as a quick thing, it would definitely be helpful to just have a plane or some geometry there that stops you from looking in, right? Or at least have some like interior, like 3D stuff that gives it a little bit more volume. A common way that this is done in video games, by the way, is by using cube maps. So they kind of fake interior maps by like baking like a 3D thing down onto like a 2D plane as like a kind of a billboard that kind of fakes that effect, right? So yeah, we need to fake the effect. in your case, what's the easiest is probably doing, like you said, just a dirty glass window. That's the easiest. I don't want you to get bogged down with like doing cube maps and fake interiors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not worth it, especially because you want to focus on the rest of the scene rather than this. So yeah, do that as like a quick thing. Any other general feedback or what I can improve? So I picked a couple of things here. In general, I want to see a stronger focus on realistic building and manufacturing practices. So I know that this is very generic, right? But like look at how stuff is done in real life and then translate that into your scene. For example, this trim that you have, it doesn't feel like that's a trim that would exist in real life. It's just, oh, you just wanted to have like a quick thing to kind of cover things up. But it's not something that you would necessarily see in real life. So that's why you look at references, right? I took like 5 minutes and I just looked at like a bunch of ref and I was like, oh, this would be cool to do as like a little trim here, right? This is an example, but this already feels like way better, right? Also, you can see that like from this image, well, you can barely see it because it's so pixelated. Like these pillars are actually just like bolted into the floor with like a little panel, right? Again, comes from reference, right? Like we can see what we need to like replicate to make the space feel believable. Because right now, what is happening is you just have a cylinder that goes into a plane. And I know it's small, but like all this attention to detail will make it feel like it's not a real world, right? We need to replicate it as best as possible. The same can be said here. So for example, this door, usually you have a frame that is like multi-layered, right? So we kind of have like this outer frame, and we have like an inner frame, and then there is like a space within that inner frame to then have the door, right? And even you can see that this is like a bigger door, and it kind of has like a multiple layers of like, oh, there's a little door inside of the bigger door, all that kind of stuff. And just having like a different pattern as well. I'm not saying that the different pattern is what you need to do, but I want you to really look at how stuff exists in real life, and then how we need to translate that into 3D. Because real life is what makes our stuff believable, right? Like that grounds what we do. Because this little section here, it just doesn't look believable. Like we're missing the hinges. There's no hinges here. There's no frame on the actual wooden door, right? Because you can kind of see that there is also like frame where then the hinges go into, and that's how the door like opens and closes. It's that layered approach and like all those details that are going to make stuff feel real, right? Same for the bridge, right? Quick example again. Look at the curve of this bridge, how it's built, and like how the pathway kind of just like aligns with that bridge, right? Whereas this, it doesn't really feel like a real bridge, right? So look at ref and really take inspiration from real life, right? Because it's going to make it feel more real, right? And also important with ref, try to get specific. So what I was looking up specifically, I think I used like a search term where it was like Birmingham docks like 1900s or something like that. And then it gave me like a bunch of this stuff, right? And this is awesome for inspiration. Like this is more for like, okay, what was the general vibe like, right? but it gives you like a really good idea of like, oh, what are they transporting? Oh, look at these bags. Interesting. They have lettering on them, right? Whereas the bags that you have here, they don't have anything on them. Right, so like this again, I just wanted to do like a general like vibe check and kind of see what would be really interesting to replicate. Look at this stuff. That looks awesome, doesn't it? Like just from like how like unreal it kind of looks, as in like, oh, this kind of looks like otherworldly, you know? And like how the docks are kind of held up by like a lot of like timber still. There's a lot of really interesting things that you can get out of just like going deep into reference and then seeing what kind of elements that you want to replicate, right? For example, I don't want to replicate everything of it because this is not even like the right channel, right? Like it's not the right size, but it would be cool to have some sort of like crane systems, right? Because we have all these like high buildings. So what they used to do back then was they have like a crane that's just attached to here so that they can easily get stuff up. What that does, it adds complexity to the scene and it adds verticality to the scene, right? And that's gonna look sick. Also, make some buildings like taller and add a little bit more variation to the skyline, right? Because right now, everything is kind of just, it's the same, right? We need to break that up somehow. Like play around with the silhouettes. And make it more interesting to look at. So a couple of keywords here. Verticality, right? Just how tall a building is comparatively to something else. Like just having like that variation, it's gonna help a lot. The silhouette of the buildings is gonna help tremendous amount as well. Now, for example, this building is not just like a flat block, but it kind of goes up to here, then comes down here. There's maybe like a little crossing, and then this side of the building is smaller again. You know, this adds like visual interest to the scene, like immediately, with just repurposing what you already have, right? So try to play around with like different areas, like different heights and silhouettes. Hello, color-coded Insignia. Lovely to see you here. Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Yeah, but like, oh, also the reasons why I added this image in here, because I was really curious about, okay, what is transported, right? Oh, also, sorry, Andrea. I kind of missed your message there, but it's lovely to see you. Yeah, thanks for popping in. That's awesome. Let's see, Darren actually added some cranes. They're visible in the last screenshots. Let's see. Do I not have? Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. That is awesome. Yeah, so you can immediately see that adds like a lot of interest to the scene already, right? Like now, we need to make sure that they're placed in the correct location and that they have variation to them as well. So for example, it could be nice to just have like one of them has like a bunch of stuff hanging on top of it, right? And one of them could be like empty down here. And we can really play with that. And then adding that together with like the silhouette changes on some of the buildings, that is going to be really cool because now the scene becomes more interesting in general, right? Like the thing that I'm trying to put an emphasis on is at this point, the things that need fixing is not necessarily like how you approach your texturing and all that kind of stuff, even though we can improve that. It's more about looking at it from like a fundamental level, like getting more height variation, silhouettes. Yeah, really have a look at some of this stuff. Like I found it super interesting that you could actually go in and say like, hey, look, this is my tobacco docks, right? And how does this area look different from the rest. Because what we can do then is we give each area a specific zone, right? Because what you might end up with now is that you're doing set dressing, but everything is generic, right? And that's good for like a base level, right? But then to build on top of that, we need to pick a couple of areas and make them more unique. So I don't know, this building is pretty prominent. So what was the sign here? Storage warehouse. I would not make that a storage warehouse. I would make that a specific building. So the tobacco building or the whiskey building or whatever you want to do with it, right? And then tie that in with some sort of like branding to make it stand out from like all the rest. And that means that this like the most prominent building that you have here, if you make that unique, maybe do something with like a back building here. Just making these two unique is going to help the scene to stand out just in general. Because we don't have to make every building unique, because if you make everything unique, nothing is going to be, right? So just pick one or two buildings, make them unique, give them like their own brand, and use that brand to create like a consistency between building itself, but then also the assets that are being like, or like the things that they're trying to store, and bring that into the building. So let's do a little recap. So the first thing is everything needs to be more grounded, right? We grounded, we talked about like getting references, paying attention to like the modeling, and like really looking up like, okay, what does a wooden gate look like? Like, what do I need to model? And it sounds so silly when I say it out loud, but that is really the stuff that makes it interesting, right? Like interesting for us to look at. Number two is silhouette. What else did we talk about? So silhouette. Silhouette, verticality. And then number three was unique areas, right? So that we have like a couple of unique areas that are worth looking at and that can potentially serve as like a focal point. That's why I picked this building, because it is in the middle of the scene, and no matter what you're gonna do with this camera point, that building is always gonna be in the center of it. So that would be just like a good candidate to do something with. Cool. Yeah. I know that we skipped over some of the improvements, right? But I really like the way that you added and adjusted your materials, right? It feels way more consistent now. Like it feels like one consistent surface, which is really good. So big props there. I like that you added like some sort of, like I can kind of see it here, where you try to vary up like the stone staircase as well. That is great, right? Great stuff. Keep that up and try to implement like those things on like every asset that you see. Like, again, start with referencing. Okay, where do I need to go? And then, or like, how do I need to make this? Let's be more specific. And then, yeah, recreate it as accurately as possible within reason. Within reason, I mean that you don't need to model like every bolt and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, but the base object needs to be like, oh yeah, that's a door, right? That makes sense. Yeah. Cool stuff with the lighting updates as well. I think lighting like this could be very interesting, because also just thinking about it, like this is a time in space where it is really foggy, right? Like it's not foggy, it's just like it's so toxified because of all the toxins that get, like, all the pollution that's in the air, right? So you can really play that up as like a thing that you can like play around with. So doing something along these lines would be really, really cool. Yeah, great stuff, Darren. Thanks for the updates. And yeah, I'll share this picture with you like after the stream as well, so that you have some of the references that I have too. Cool. Hello, Pavel. I'm a new 3D environment artist, and I just wanted to say that your stream is super cool and informative. Thank you so much. That is awesome. And then Darren saying, thank you for the feedback. No worries. Thank you for posting your work. Honestly, I know that sometimes I can imagine that it's pretty intimidating to have your work showcased live and then kind of get like a bunch of feedback. So awesome, man. Like, great stuff that you're doing, and keep it up. Blazer Gamer is asking, can I become an environment artist specialized in materials and textures? And then Slate is right, it's called a material artist. And as a material artist, do you still do set dressing and modeling? Nope. Nope. In bigger AAA studios now, again, like I want to say the caveat, like my focus has always been on bigger AAA studios, right? So take that with a grain of salt. Smaller studios usually are more generalistic and allow you to wear more hats, where bigger studios are more specialized. What I can see is that material artists in bigger studios, they only focus on material creation. And then you just hand that off to the environment artist, like myself in this case. And then we use that to then texture and work whatever we need to do with it. It might be the case that sometimes that will deviate depending on which studio you are at. But if you really have to think about it, like material artist these days is so specialized, and there's rather few positions in-house from what I can tell. Because let's take an average team, right? The majority of the team is going to be environment artists because they need to populate the world, right? A material artist, there might be like one or two, or maybe a handful in a team, right? If we're really stretching the definition. Because yeah, there's only so many materials that you need to make for an environment, right? Because at a certain point, like you can't create like an infinite amount of materials, because then you're going to be putting a strain on like the memory budget for the game itself. So just to give you like a little bit more context, like usually with big open world games, what gets done is that you have some sort of limitation in terms of the amount of materials that are created by the area that you're working in. So each zone might have like its own set of materials. And those are the only materials that can be used, because otherwise you're going to be loading in all the materials in the world, and that will run into like memory restrictions. So a little bit of context there. Let's switch it on over to Alejandro. Where's Alejandro? No, I saw. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hey, Angelo, what did I miss? We were potentially talking about our secret plans at a certain point to potentially do podcasts. I don't know if you still remember. We had the whole idea. So that's what you missed. But let's see, Alejandro. Let's see. So the stuff I'm looking for, I have refocused the scene to be more of an actual street, and I have this bar and restaurant to be the focal point. I plan for it to be very colorful, neon, and calls attention, but also could have this dirty look. Do not forget we're in the slums-like area. Okay. On with the layout. Yeah, I mean, it is definitely going to be an attention grabber, right? Say less, I'm in. So yeah, this is definitely going to be an attention grabber, for sure. The only thing that I'm not too sure about is that this is the thing that you would see in like a slum area, right? Maybe I'm thinking about like non-cyberpunky slums, let's say. Because like my vision of a slum is this, where people don't have resources. So then having like a nightclub or like a sick restaurant in that area would be weird. I'm not saying that it can't be done, right? But it would potentially be more something like a cyberpunkish vision of a slum then. But yeah, first of all, I think it definitely draws more attention for sure. And the way that you're thinking about it is also good, where we have like bright colors that can be used for attention grabbing, right? So that part of it is really good. Great stuff on that. Yeah, so maybe I have just a question there, right? It's not that it's necessarily bad, but it's more a question of how does this fit into a slum? Right? And I'm not saying that as a way of like, oh, you shouldn't do this. But I'm just bringing it up as in a way that we need to build supporting elements around it so that it does make sense, right? Because if you look at Cyberpunk 2077, for example, like there are more dingy areas that also have like restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely happens, right? We just need to make sure that the storytelling is consistent. Cool. Second question. For the ground, I'm still sort of stuck. Would I make one road or use decals and puddles to break it up, or have the sidewalk? I mean, I added like a bunch of like references here, which again, if you're stuck with this, right? Go to our trusty friend, references. Again, just a snippet of just like five minutes of looking around, right? And we have like a bunch of variation where you kind of have like this very dirty, like kind of gravelly, like concretey stuff. Then we kind of have like one level up where it's like it is concrete, but it's being patched up. Right? So that could be like another way of doing it, or just like giant concrete slabs, or going with something more natural, right? I think that could also be interesting. The reason why I find this interesting is because it allows you to really quickly fill up the whole space with minimal effort. And also it adds to the color contrast, right? So what I'm thinking is that you have your green on the floor, and then you have your bright colors on the restaurant side, right? And we add this contrast, which is going to help the restaurant stand out even more than it would do. Plus, with this, you can kind of introduce like some foliage and some overgrown stuff to it as well. I think this would be a good contender, but obviously, this depends on you, right? Like what you want to be doing with that. That's when it comes to floor. Like I said, you have like a whole bunch of variations, right? Like you could go with something like more simple like this and just have it like relatively organic, have like an open sewer next to it. You could really build that out nicely. Or go with something more simple like this. It kind of just depends on where you want to take the scene, right? Swanboy is saying, it may not be entirely what you're aiming for, but maybe look at places like Shinjuku back alleys and Bangkok in Thailand. Yeah, I mean, so I specifically looked at slums in Manila, right? Because they have like, well, I don't know if this is weird to say, but like the most famous slums, I guess. Or, I mean, I've done so much research on like Manila because we did like a reference or like an asset pack for it, like the most recent thing we did. So yeah, that was like the easiest thing that I could go to. But like whatever you can find, right? Like whatever basically in this case for Alejandro, whatever fits the purpose best, like That's the thing to go for, right? Penguin Juice Box, hello, hello. How are you today? I'm doing good. We had some technical issues before, but it's all solved now. And now we're just having some fun looking at people's work. Well, yeah, how are you? Ancenary is saying, how does the blur in the neon mesh with the ambient shadows while the fog gently mutates the atmosphere, questioning whether the environment is alive or just a series of misplaced vertices? That is a very esoteric question. It almost feels like... this almost feels like it's AI. How does a blur in the neon mesh with the ambient shadows while the fog gently mutates the atmosphere, questioning whether the environment is alive or just a series of misplaced vertices? Oh, and there goes my headset again. Oh, god damn it. It's technical issue central today. But I mean, there's some interesting stuff in there, right? So you could kind of have looks like a Mid-Journey prompt. Yeah, it kind of feels like it. There's some interesting stuff in there regardless though. Like you could almost have like some sort of like fog coming out of like this dance club almost, right? And then have like some interplay with like the neon meshes. That could be cool. More like yeah, more like what I imagined like Cyberpunk 2077 to do, right? Where just really playing things up with like the atmospherics. I think that could potentially be an interesting thing to add on top of it. Let's see. Last question here. How's the composition for the shots? I want to work on a good composition for this piece too. I'm a fan of the composition. I like that you added a truck there as well. I'm kind of skeptical on... So I'm kind of skeptical on the truck by itself, as in like, hey, if we just want a blocker, right? We just want like a visual blocking volume, basically. Maybe a truck is just like too elaborate for it to be there. But this could also just be... So if we ask ourselves like, is this too complex to model, texture, all that kind of stuff, just for like a thing that blocks the road? This could honestly be one of those cases where we just grab like an asset pack. Something that fits potentially, because we are going to focus most of our attention here anyway. So that means that this is probably going to be dark by design. So I think we don't really have to be worried about that too much. But yeah, I think I like the way that you block this stuff off. I like that the side alley is a little bit tightened up. Now it just comes down to like what you're gonna do with the road, right? Because it is a big surface. I'm gonna keep riffing on it, but like, what if? Okay, so what if we bring the train track idea back in, and then what if this is like an old like train depot that got converted into like a restaurant now, right? We could almost have it as like an old tram depot where they do like refurbishments and all that kind of stuff. It could potentially be interesting. But again, it's up to you. It is up to you. But yeah, the composition so far is nice. I mean, it hasn't really changed, right? I feel like we're getting settled on like a really good composition. What I want to see now is, because it's such a big surface, we need to really figure out what we're going to do with the road. And basically prioritize that. And then start building like white box assets, right? So that we can get a feel of like what needs to be developed for the whole scene be where you want it to be. So that would be like number 3. Number 3 would be composition is good. Position is good. I just want to see white box assets and the floor. Right? Really focus on the big chunks of the level and get those in production. And we got a special request here from Angelo. Moody lighting. Let's go. I'm honestly, in my head, this is like Cyberpunk Central, you know? It is just like very colorful, like flashy, like not flashy, like neon kind of like focal point with like some atmospherics coming out of it, right? Like this is gonna look sick. Moody glow. What did I write? Moody lighting. Can I request some cinematics? Okay, we art book. Like, light, I'm okay with, because that needs to happen, but come on. It should be dark with thick volumetric fog. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm imagining, right? Just like the volumetric fog like piling out of the building. The Marmoset Emperor says, my dream is to be an environment artist. This is a well chosen name. I think already with that name choice, you're on the right track. And A is popping in as well. Love to see you here, A. And thank you for saying so. I hope you're doing well as well. Right on. We're gonna move on to Joe Bates next. And Leo Tom is saying, I just realized that I forgot to put the Web Wednesday tag in my project, but I changed today to know if I still have a chance to get into feedback. Did I pick your stuff up? No, unfortunately, it was too late. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was too late. I love that you added like a dot as a comment last, Leo. So yeah. We'll pick it up next week. I'll see if I can maybe find like space in the week somewhere to do something. Or maybe at the end of this, but that's not a promise. So we'll have to see. Joe, hello. I started working on this project based on a Blade Runner concept art by, obviously, Sid Mead. Some beautiful Sid Mead stuff over here. This looks awesome. Let's see. Mainly wondering on your thoughts on the shader. Does it read like a Blade Runner style thing, or maybe too futuristic? Also, if you think anything blockout wise could be altered, please let me know. So I'm not too worried about the shader at this point. Yeah. I'm honestly, yeah, I wouldn't focus on the shader, like just straight up, you know? That is not the main concern right now. It kind of feels like, I mean, just thoughts streaming out of my head. It just kind of feels like you're focusing on the details while not focusing on the main thing just yet. But on the shader side first then, because you did ask, let's think about it, because the way that I like those like stereotypical like holographic like futuristic shaders, they usually have multiple layers to them. Like they usually have like you could probably do it in like multiple ways. The way that I can easily think about it is just having like the same mesh but just like slightly scaled, smaller and smaller, and then maybe doing some adjustments to the materials as well. That would be too expensive though. But yeah, that is what I am missing at the moment. Because it does feel like it's just like a solid volume, right? But we don't want it to feel like a volume. It should almost feel like you can walk through it. So yeah, like multiple meshes, or maybe a shader that has like parallax with multiple layers on it as well. This stuff, Angela is saying, shader wise, you can try the new thin translucent shading model in some Fresnel opacity, kind of fade, so they kind of fade on the edges. Yeah, that's a good shout as well. What I was gonna say is that I wonder, this is gonna get so technical, but I wonder if you can make use of parallax occlusion artifacts when it comes through this shader, right? Because sometimes what you want to do with a parallax occlusion map shader is you want to bump up the amount of samples so that you don't see the stepping. However, in this case, we might want to do the opposite. So I wonder if you can use a parallax occlusion map somehow to then see the stepping in your shader. So that, let's say if you set it to 4, that you see like 4 layers, but we're actually just doing 1, right? Yeah, like 3 steps with a long distance. Yeah, something like that. It makes me want to try it out myself, you know? Because it's something that I've been thinking about for such a long time, but I just never had an opportunity to do so. And I'm just like, oh, that must be so fun. So maybe using parallax occlusion mapping here would be cool. It would be fun to try out. But Angela was saying thin translucent material. Material plus Fresnel. Fresnel is gonna do wonders. I think I see some Fresnel stuff already happening anyway, so it would be good. So Fresnel is basically where if you have like a rounded object, like the edges are gonna be darker or lighter, depending on the viewing angle that we look at things. Would be cool. That would be something to try. I think the bigger things, it's actually smart. Ubisoft sort of used the technique on Cobblestone in Ghost Recon. Are you talking about like using the stepping artifacts on Cobblestone? Because parallax occlusion mapping, I mean, that technique in general is used by every game ever now. Like, it's really common. Because first, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Deus Ex actually came out by using like actual tessellation, which is actually just having like a dense mesh that will like offset the geometry, right? So they had that in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I think. But it was really expensive. So like parallax occlusion mapping was basically just the more optimized version of that, right? Because we don't really add parallax occlusion. No, parallax occlusion doesn't add geo. Like, it just fakes geo because it offsets. I mean, I'm not a technical person, right? But I think it offsets the actual pixels. Split fiction, R-Station, amazing environments. How to create this? Are you talking about how to create split fiction environments? I've not looked at it, so I have no idea. Joey is saying, I only know parallax mostly used for roads and windows. Oh no, it's used on like a lot of surfaces now. A lot of it. Basically anything with a little bit of depth is probably going to use parallax these days. Yeah. Unless you can, yeah, unless you don't need it, right? Because there are surfaces that don't really need it. Yeah. I'm new to all of this and I want to become an environment artist. What should I learn first? First, how to model a prop. That's it. Start modeling a prop. That's where you should start. And then learn how to unwrap, then learn how to texture, learn how to bake, learn how to do all that stuff, but just keep it to one prop. And once you got like sort of comfortable with that, the rest of it is all gonna build on top of that. Yeah. Step 1, model a prop. Change profession. Fuck's sake. What is happening with my headphones again? God dang it. Where's 3? Oh, there's no profit in that equation. So there's no step 3. No. Step 4 doesn't exist. You just keep changing professions, you know? Just go from like lighting artist, nah, prop artist, nah, environment artist, nah. And just keep switching them up. Endless cycle. Slade is asking, do you think balancing between POM and tessellation is a good idea performance-wise or nah? It depends on the use case. Because right now, it seems like with nanite, POM is less and less used, right? Because, I mean, tessellation is the new POM again, right? Because now we have like nanite, everything is more optimized. So now we're leaning more back towards like tessellation. So we kind of did this like, oh, let's try tessellation. Oh shit, we don't have the GPU power yet. Let's fake it. And then it's like, oh, now we're bringing it back because we actually have beefy GPUs now. Which is usually the way that it works. I mean, that's the whole reason why normal maps exist, right? It's like, oh, we can't have this dense geometry on any asset in the game. Cool. How do we fake it? Let's try a normal map, right? Some crazy idea that was just basically just yeah, just because there's not enough performance, especially at that time. But we're entering a new age where nanite is becoming more and more common, and geometry is just dense geometry now. It's freaking sick to think about. Cool. Question number 2 from Joe. Let's have a look. So, oh yeah, it was about like the block out, right? I added like a couple of images here just because I kind of wanted to really highlight the core of what is behind the cyberpunk vision, right? And that is this really interesting blend between architectural styles. I was trying to look architect blend architecture, right? So you can kind of see it in Sid Mead's work as well. Like you kind of have these like very traditional like Brooklyn Street kind of like buildings, right? I don't know if Brooklyn is the correct area. I'm not from the US, but anyway, you kind of have this like very traditional, semi like ornamental, like New York, Brooklyn kind of buildings. But then we have this like sci-fi layer that's kind of built on top of it, right? And this is very interesting, right? Because Sid Mead, unfortunately, like he passed away like a couple of years ago, but that was the time that he grew up in, right? Like, so he had this like futuristic vision, but it was built on the knowledge that he had like back in the day. And that's where cyberpunk kind of comes from, right? It's like this very dystopian like future vision where like you just think far ahead in their time zone, or like in their era. That is what's going to happen, right? Or that could be like a future vision. We can do the same thing too in our time, right? Like if you look at like, okay, just imagine yourself in like 50 years in the future. What would things look like? What would the architecture look like? Well, what would be our daily lives, you know? Like these very future thinkers. But what I did want to say is that you can kind of see, like you see the old, which is like the old buildings, and then you see all this like crazy pipe stuff, which at that point, that was like the future, right? It was very mechanical. It wasn't digital, it was mechanical back in the day. So that's where like the clash of that comes from. It's just, oh, this is my futuristic kind of dystopian vision where this kind of mechanical layer is gonna overtake all of it, right? And then we have a very, very early vision of what like future displays were, right? They're kind of coming in, but they're not as dominant as we know them now to be, right? So it's this interesting like look. But basically, I want to see more of that, right? Like I want to see how you then build on top of your, because right now you only have the old layer, right? But I want to see how you're going to build on top of that layer. And there's beautiful examples in Cyberpunk where you actually have like the old facades that are then like built on top of with like skyscraper buildings, right? That are like pristine and like kind of have this like new kind of look on them. So there were a couple of examples where they literally had like pillars just overtaking like the old building, and then the new building was kind of just like built on top of it with like new swanky glass windows and like big displays and like all that kind of stuff, right? And that's why this thing is here, because it kind of has the same feeling, you know? Even though this is the same architectural style, imagine that this is the old, and then that is the new. Right? That's basically what you're trying to replicate in this situation. Same here. This is basically our future vision, right? Like this is like the stereotypical traditional buildings that we're used to, and this is what we think the future to be. Right? The same thing can happen here, right? Like it's sort of very similar to the building that you have. You just have like this core remnant of a building that kind of has like some cyberpunky like aesthetic just like slapped on top of it, right? It's almost like it's overtaken the original building. But that is the stuff that I want to see. Like really blending that old architecture with the new architecture, because that's the core of it, right? That's at the core. Cool. Yeah, very quick little feedback there. Thank you so much for showcasing this. I love using like Sid Mead as an inspiration. I think it's something. There's a very interesting time period that his work specifically like captures, right? It's very like retro sci-fi, which is really cool. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how this comes together, Joe. It's gonna be cool. Next up is Nicholas. Nicholas is working on a concept from André Jerempel. That's this one. Miguel, do I hear cyberpunk? Dun dun dun. Split fiction concept? Someone really loves split fiction. I've not played it. I need to give it a try. Let's see. Kawi, sorry for missing that question. Oh, Connor, you were over on the other video. Yeah. We had some technical difficulties again, so sorry about that. Where's the question again? Kawi, I'm new to environment art. I'm already making my game system from login lobby to gameplay over to return lobby. I hope I can do an environment for my game and learn references. And I learn references is super important. Yeah. So what you're talking about there is like making your own game, right? It's not specific to environment art. Yeah, that's cool. Best of luck with that, because that's a whole journey. But it's gonna be cool though. Okay, so let's have a look at this work from Nicholas. The goals of this project was to add an indoor environment to my portfolio, getting experience working with COD models, using decals, practicing indoor lighting, and attempting to recreate the concept art as best as I could. I would really like some feedback that comes to, like any feedback that comes to mind, although some areas that I would like specific things on is the incomplete half of the room shown in the second shot and the lighting. Okay, so half of this, I guess? Second shot? Yeah. Okay. I think we're just talking about like brainstorming then, right? Got two number ones here. I'm gonna do that. So this room over here then, I'm not sure what you want me to say about that. Honestly, I would look at just replicating some of the motifs that you have going on here, right? Like maybe having like a bigger cupboard here to kind of fill up like some of the volume. Right? And then just have like some of like the wallpaper just peeling off again. And then maybe having like some smaller frames. Something like that. So I don't tend to explain this much, but like the way that I always think is, okay, I need to fill up this space, right? So I need to fill up this area. How do I do that? I try to focus on like the biggest thing that I can possibly think that is still relevant to the story or what the setting is, right? So in this case, that's why the wardrobe came in first, right? Because I was like, okay, I need something big that can potentially just help me like block out the space. You could potentially also do the same thing with like just like a big standing mirror and just move that to the other side. And then honestly, just, yeah, again, just continue the same kind of motifs that you have going on here, right? Just break up the paint a little bit. And I think that's going to be more than enough, because I think with this kind of style, subtlety is kind of key, right? I think you almost don't even need to have the frames there, because it might get too much, because you kind of want to keep it very austere or whatever, like very subdued. Angelo is saying broken down ceiling fan or a chandelier, ripped curtains, cracked mirror, one of the frames that has fallen off. Yeah, let's add some of those ideas, right? So well, frames, fallen frames, broken ceiling fan kind of has me wondering like what time this is set in, but let's add it anyway, right? Cracked mirror. And a chandelier. A chandelier could be cool, potentially. But it is, yeah, it is this weird combination of like a bunch of stuff then, right? I don't know. I actually don't know what would actually be appropriate for the era that this is set in, and then also what you would kind of expect to be in a bathroom. Also, I'm just noticing this, like, it seems like it's missing like the top trim here around the whole thing. So, a little side note. Some soap gunk or even mold on a bathtub. Basically the British house. Fuck's sake. It is so true though. Can't even open the window. Oh my god, this is gonna be mold central. I mean, it might not be a bad idea actually. Just like mold, like some sort of like, I don't know, some like, yeah, mold gunk, like, yeah, I think that could be cool. Definitely be cool. Second thing here is talking about the lighting, and I think what I would love to replicate from the concept over here is we have contrast. We have contrast happening between this sliver of gold and then the rest of the scene kind of has like a slight blue to it. Slight blue in the shadows. right? So, and that contrast between the two really helps the scene come to life. And this will be post-processing, right? You can kind of play with like the shadow color and all that kind of stuff. I mean, correct me if I'm, how would you do this, Angelo? Be curious. Because I mean, Angelo is a lighting artist by trade. Will you do it with your lights and then do the post-processing on top of it? Or will you just straight up do it in the post-processing? For example, if we have this, would you just manipulate the colors through post-processing, or? I bumped the shadows a lot to give it that old filmic look. Okay. Yeah, let's make a note of that in just a second. Are megascans considered cheating? Like, will recruiters not like the fact I have megascans in my environment snowballed by me? No, so it's not cheating. But it comes down to what I said before, right? You have to pick how you use it. So for example, you create like a beautiful, let's be specific with this, right? Let's say you create like a beautiful outdoor abandoned house, right? And we're kind of looking at it from the outside, right? So imagine this building. I'll do like a quick draw up here. So let's say, we have like this building here, and you have like the doorway, cool, and you have like a road leading to it. Awesome, right? You make the whole building. Amazing. But let's say, oh, I would love to have like a couple of trees here and there. Just use megascans. It's honestly not worth it because you're just doing additional set dressing, right? You just want to make sure that the thing that is at the core of the project is done by you. And then anything that you do outside of it, that could potentially be megascans. Now, where this becomes interesting, and this is the way that I try to approach my portfolio as well, back when I was like really trying to get a job in the beginning, is that I kind of looked at my projects as like, okay, I don't have this skill. This is going to be a skill-focused project. So if you go look to my older work, you'll see that I have like a foliage specific project. And that was purely because I didn't know how to make foliage. So I had just like a foliage project done, right? So you could then start combining that with like, hey, look, I've made this environment and I used megascans for the trees. And if foliage interests you enough, you could then do a foliage based project after that and kind of round out your skills. I kind of briefly talked about that when it comes to like how to start an environment. I talk about a T-shaped skill personality, right? And that's basically the way that you kind of build up your skills, because that's what recruiters are interested in. So let's see, let's do a property. And then you imagine that like all of these like individual things, they are like all your skills, right? And this is a very simple representation. These skills are what you want to get hired for. And these skills are just like really interesting for a recruiter to know about you, right? And it makes you more versatile. But you can't really stand out if this is your skill set. Right? Because then they don't know what to hire you for. Yeah. Megascans is not cheating. It just depends how you use it. You don't want to replace the stuff that you're responsible for or that you want to do. The reference is very washed out. A lot of it is post-processing, but I'd also increase the bloom radius and maybe that intensity to get that highlight to spread out a bit more. Yeah, I think that's a good shout because we kind of have like a lot of like nice bloom happening here, right? You can kind of see it here. Like just that haloing effect is just all bloom. So yeah, lighting would be more post-processing. Really playing around with that. What did Angela say again? Bump the shadows. Going to hit the bed. Thanks so much for the suggestions, Angelo. Love it. Compare the grayscale of both of your render and the concept and check the value range. Yep. That is awesome. So compare values. Nice. Is there anything that I'm missing there? Oh yeah, the blue. Yeah. Thanks so much for the recommendation, Angelo. Nice. So that will be it for Nicholas. I mean, honestly, like, great job already, right? Like, we're getting to that stage where it becomes more about massaging and polishing and making sure that you have like some of this stuff going on, right? It's very subtle, but there is like a discoloration that happens at the top of like the ceiling, and that's just all like decal work, right? But really going crazy with the amount of decals and making sure that that is like representable. Oh, that was like another thing. Yeah, you can kind of see like mold. You have like some decal work here, right? And what that does is it blends all the surfaces together, and it kind of has like a nice transition, because this stuff is basically to make sure that this transitions nicely into that, in terms of consistency of colors and texture and all that kind of stuff. So that needs to be done here, because the contrast between the surfaces is quite stark, right? Yeah, more decals, more polish stuff. Yeah, great stuff so far, Nicholas. Really, really great job. Keep pushing it, and especially, yeah, really push that like roughness variation as well. That's the last thing I'll add here, because roughness is the most important map. But yeah, tweak that stuff too. Thanks, Nicholas. Thank you for posting your work, and I think this is your first time participating in Whip Wednesday as well. So awesome to have you here. Welcome to the community. Next up, we have Alexander. Alexander's doing a cool little block out. Let's see, Sierra. Thank you so much for the question, Sierra, as well. Should I be focusing more on creating set dressing or materials and textures or props? I like set design and creating a mood and atmosphere, but I'm not sure if I should focus on that as a specific skill. So as a specific skill, even if they were to hire you for that, that is such a risky position to be in. Even though the reality of my job is that the majority of what I do is also set dressing and like making sure that spaces are well designed, and, well, I have to be careful with designed, that like I basically get like the spaces from level design and I make them pretty, right? And I have to look at like what's available to me and then fill the gaps where stuff is not available, and then make them look epic, make them look cool while still retaining like all the gameplay functionality, right? So that's basically what you'd be looking for as well. But the reality of that job is that you can't get that job if you don't have that flexibility of being able to make assets on top of it. And with assets, I don't mean like high quality individual assets, but any sort of like architecture, right? Any sort of like architecture or knowing how to sculpt terrain, whatever the studio is looking for, right? You kind of want to give yourself some flexibility in your skill set, because only doing set dressing is very fragile in terms of job security, even if you were to get hired. So all right, Alexander, overhaul, how does my blockout compare to the concept? I think it's really good. So we have the concept down here. I think the blockout is really good. The main thing that I really wanted to point out was that the windows, they feel like they need to either be less wide or that they need to be taller. right? So you kind of have the choice there because it feels like it adds like a nice height to the whole environment. So you can either like squish them to kind of get the perception that the room is taller, because a lot of this stuff is not necessarily like, oh, it's accurate because that's how it looks. Sometimes we can kind of create the feeling of the space being taller than it actually is by playing around with the dimensions of certain aspects, right? So making those feel taller, and the same with the doors as well. That would be really helpful. But they need to feel taller. Yeah. Overall, that's all I have to say about it for now when I had like a quick glance. So yeah, great stuff so far. And yeah, really cool looking block out as well. I think you got all the... This is a good representative block out to me. Like you have like all you need in the scene to just go to like a production stage, right? So great stuff, Alexander. Yeah, thank you for sharing your work again. Was a quick one. Next one is Malta. Have some references again. So 2 questions. Check the before and after image. I've added some angle variation to the rocks, but I'm worried it looks too chaotic and random. Oh, I see. Is there too much random variation? Or do you think I should make it only so some of the shapes are somewhat angled? I don't mind it. It's honestly not that big of a change to me necessarily. I mean, I see it visually, right? But like, it doesn't make enough of a change for me to be like really worried about like, oh my god, this looks so chaotic. So I think this looks fine. How often do you work in a playable level? Asked Connor B. In jams, I've done it due to the time. It's all just done in parallel, so I'm testing while addressing all the time. There's an additional component that is fairly unknown until you get into the industry, and that is actually the concept of level design and nav meshes. So a nav mesh is basically a mesh that gets generated on all the walkable surfaces that you have. Every game has this. It's kind of like this invisible thing that happens. If you've done a game jam, you might have encountered it, depending on what you were responsible for. But that is honestly like, whenever we create something or like we set dress an area, we need to make sure that we have a smooth navigation mesh. I'll give you a quick example here. So let's say, let me see. This is my stack of boxes, right? So we're looking at it from the top-down view. This is my stack of boxes. Awesome. Now, what happens here is that I introduced like an annoying little snag. And that is because like the nav mesh will generate, and this is what it will do. Right, so this is all the space that we can walk as a player, right? That's this like this area over here. Now what happens is that I as a player, I can be here and I can get stuck in this corner. So a lot of what we do with set dressing is we need to keep that into account as well, which is really important because as artists, we don't want to damage gameplay functionality, right? Because this might be, again, a controversial opinion, but gameplay always comes first. If you don't have good gameplay, people are generally not going to care about art. So what we do in this case is we could do like a couple of options, right? We can rotate this case into place so that we have a smooth surface, or we can just add like, I don't know, like another thing like here, that allows us to have like a smooth surface, right? So yeah, that's also like, that is one thing that we need to keep in mind. Proportions, walking around in a level or in a world, you're always going to get a better idea of actually how things look by having this like walk through it, right? Super, super helpful. Yeah, that is, I just wanted to bring up the topic of map meshes because that is like one thing that is just generally not really known because it's more like a level design thing. Free doodle for Mecma. No, delete it. Nothing's for free. Good to know. I'll look up more about that. Well, it's one of those cases where for artists, it's not that important until you encounter it, and then until you encounter it, and then it's relatively easy to solve it, right? Damn it, it's gone forever. Okay. Because you know you've been paying attention, you've been sharing your work like often as well. I'll give you this one for free, you know? I'll make it better. I'll give you a star as well. Here you go. Get a free star on top of it too. So what was I talking about? Yeah, so there's like a bunch of stuff that we need to keep in mind when it comes to actually set dressing the space, right? One of those other things is also keeping in mind, like if you're dealing with dynamic objects, for example, if you have a static object, let's say an object that will never be dynamic for whatever reason, you cannot have that object on top of a static object, right? Because if the player shoots that dynamic object and the dynamic object moves and gets out of there, but the static object is now floating, right? But it's those kind of things. They're not necessarily difficult to solve, and you're just gonna get to know them through the development that you're gonna be encountering them. So yeah, back to MechFile's work. Yeah, the chaotic nature of this, again, I would test it in the level, right? This actually is a good transition from like, hey, testing it always and every time, like Connor is saying, just test it in the level. If it's too chaotic, it will show up when you replace the mesh in the level, right? If the overall picture looks too chaotic, then that becomes an issue. You attach the high poly untextured as well as the texture in Unreal. Noise would now only be placed in certain areas instead of everywhere. Does the high poly and the textured still read as noisy, or has it improved from last week? No, I think it has improved from last week. Definitely. What I do want you to focus even more on is looking at the bigger picture, right? So I have like a couple of examples here. Look at it more from a broader perspective. And maybe it becomes a time where we need to have multiple rocks so that we can actually see how to recreate like bigger surfaces, right? Because there's only so much you can do with, depending on what you want to do with your tool, of course. But there's only so much that you can do with having one rock and then just placing it everywhere, right? For example, what we can see here is that you have larger surfaces that are pretty noise free, and then you have like these like sections where it's like very noisy, right? And that contrast between the two makes it like interesting to look at. Again, here we have like this empty spot, or this empty spot over here, and then you have like very chaotic like stuff happening, right? This stuff is really cool, right? And trying to replicate that through having multiple assets or maybe having decals or whatever, like that's the thing that you should focus on for like a broader perspective. Because I think that's what I was kind of struggling with explaining the last couple of weeks, is that we can only get so far by generating a single asset. For big surfaces, we need to make use of multiple assets. right? Because yeah, no matter how cool we try to be with like having this modular rock that we can rotate and all that kind of stuff, if you really want to drive like the realistic nature of things, we need to have some variation in there. Yeah, I noticed that you had like a couple of variants in the rocks as well. I think that is good. Really have a look at some of the references and try to replicate more of those surfaces, right? I picked some very specific references. But yeah. You can see that it's really interesting the way that it's like broken up. We have like this big solid, almost like noise-free chunk, and you have like noise that get introduced here. And then even breaking it up with like some of the foliage too. That could be really interesting. Right? Again, just references save the day, man. So important. And this stuff is basically just yeah, playing around with it, right? How would you do this big rock in a game? Would it be planes or singular rocks? Just kit bash together. Yeah. It would be okay. So if I were to do something like this in a game, right? So if this is like, we're gonna make a separation here, right? So if we want to have this as like, oh, this is a unique rock, then we are probably going to go ahead with like trying to make it as unique as possible. However, if I'm trying to replicate a whole environment like this, then I need to turn that into like a modular kit, right? So what I would try to do is I would try to have a look at like, okay, how can I distill this into chunks? Well, let's say this is like chunk number 1 that doesn't have like a lot of noise, right? Chunk number 2 would be one that is like a little bit more noisy, right? And then we can start from there, and maybe we can have like multiple variations, right? So let's say 2 variations from this, 2 variations from that. So we have noisy and non-noisy. I just noticed that chat isn't away from all of it. But that means that like, oh, we're gonna have like number 1A, and then this is probably gonna be, let's see. This whole thing is probably gonna be number 1B, right? Because number 1 is our modules with no noise, and then number 2 are the ones with like noise, right? And then this could be like 1A, and then this could be 1B again, because we don't really have noise. Right? It kind of depends on what our needs are, right? Because maybe these modules are too specific and too big, so we could then look into like splitting it up a bit more. And just be like, okay, we have 2B is over here, right? And then maybe like a rotated version of 2B is over here as well. Or, I don't know, 2C. Right, and then we could do the same thing for like this guy over here. Right, so that would be the way that you can build something like this up. And as long as you have some variation between big modules, medium modules, and small modules, we then have like a lot of variation, right? A lot of specific things that we can do with that. So for example, this kind of stuff on top of it, if we want to have more detail there, then that could almost be just like a combination of like medium and small things. Right? And you kind of build it up in layers. Like very, yeah, just like you said, kit bashing them together. And then we can have a look at something like this and then be like, oh, okay, so maybe this guy is like 1A, cool. So that's going to be running here. For this guy, I use like 2A. It's going to be 2B and 2C. It's so weird having to like draw the puzzle. Because this is honestly the majority of the stuff that environment artists, especially level artists, tend to do now, right? It's just, you're just puzzling stuff together to where it kind of just like works. McFadden was saying, and then hide the obvious seams with foliage and stuff. You don't even need to hide it. I think that's where the importance of having sort of like a consistent layering, right? As long as you kind of use it in the same stack, right? So where the pattern becomes really important. So let's say on a face like this, all these guys would be facing the same way, so that we create like a continuous surface. Where you have like space to be chaotic, this could literally be just like modules that are like rotated and all that kind of stuff, because it's going to be covered up with foliage, right? But you wouldn't necessarily have like too many visible seams, especially on surfaces that are like more geometry dense, right? Because that's what we're looking at right now. These examples have like more geometry. So that means that the more geometry that we have, the less we need to be worried about like seams and all that stuff. As long as we keep the consistency of like all the layers. Yeah. That would be my little breakdown. But yeah, good stuff, McFal. Great stuff as always. Yeah, just keep testing it. Like I said, like generate like a kit, right? Because you have stuff set up in Houdini. Generate like 2 versions of everything, and then just get it into the level, and just literally set dress the whole level with it, and see if you can create like something interesting. Cool. Thank you for sharing. David is asking, I uploaded my work to the whip chat yesterday, but since I forgot to include my questions, I only posted my doubts. And Discord moving to the end of the list. Yeah, like sometimes what I'll do is I'll do it by Discord order, but sometimes I'll do it like very, very random as well. I think next time we'll do it random again, because otherwise people have to kind of end up waiting. Are those the rocks that inspired Avatar? Yep, they are. I closed. I don't have like I don't have the reference open anymore. But it is like a national park in China. Yeah, it's in China. Only posted my doubts, far too relatable. Okay, let's look at those doubts then. Okay, so my main concern is the composition of the environment. In my camera shots, I still feel the environment doesn't feel very interesting yet. Cool, that is exactly what I wanted to bring up as well. So that's why I have these screenshots here, right? This is from Quixel did a demo, which is called the Talisman demo. So if you want to look that up, feel free to do so. And then I think I have one from like Star Citizen as well. I kind of was a little bit rushed for time, but there's a great series online from Morphologist, who is like an architect or a former architect by trade, who does breakdowns of Star Citizen ships and talking about like the architecture and the space and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh my god, I love watching that channel, especially if you haven't watched it before. I'll post a link in the chat as well. Can I? Let's see. Morphologist. You might have to scroll down for like the older videos, but like this stuff is like really cool. I always love watching it. Post the links of all the architects you know. We really need them. I think this one is really interesting because it's kind of looking at like game architecture and then like putting like a real life spin on it, which was really interesting. There's another. Let me look up. Headphones are gone again.
There's lots of.
Oh, cool.
The tallest wood-framed house in Russia has a history that's almost as bizarre as its. The tallest wood-framed house in Russia has a history.
Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Are really...
Okay. Oh, can I please just? Let me see if I can find like another. Where's this other channel, please? Tommy Lee. There we go. Yes, that's also a good channel. Let me link that as well. There we go. Oh, headphones are back too. Cool. So let's talk about this then, right? So we were already looking at some of the references here. The thing that just needs to happen in your environment is it needs to be more interesting shape-wise, right? That's the main thing that happens is you started with a block out that is just basically a cube and it still is a cube. That's the main issue with this environment, right? Like you can and you have like really cool stuff already set up. I mean, we spoke about like your workflow, and it's very much how I would build an environment if I was doing one myself as well. You just need to make the design more interesting, right? It needs to look interesting. It needs to look functional. I think functional is probably a better way to go about it. Because that's what a lot of these spaces are designed for, right? Like it's functionality, and you can see like the inner workings in some cases. That's why I love that architecture channel, Morphologist, because he really looks at like the range of like Star Citizen ships and then breaks down why like this brand of ships looks different because they have a different purpose, right? And you can tell the purpose of a ship by the design language as well. So that is just a thing that you need to do. And it's really tricky, right? I mean, I just say it as like, oh, that's just a thing that you need to do. This is the hardest thing to do in sci-fi, is do good design. So yeah, I would literally, the only thing that I would keep is the floor, potentially. The rest of it, I would bin, and I would try to make more interesting shapes. I know it sounds really harsh, but if you want to make it interesting, you need to take a step back here and like really think about like, oh my God, how can I make stuff more interesting? Because we need to get away from that cube first so that we can deconstruct it and make it more interesting again. And yeah, that can literally be like, I don't know, again, like it's tricky for me too, right? And I struggle with this as well when I was doing my sci-fi environment as well a while back. Like just having something that like really pushes the design a little bit more. Like a thing that I was playing around with, and this is just like my spin on it, right? Is I was trying to embed like a lot of the systems, like pipes and all that kind of stuff into the architecture. So you would kind of see like this bare bones architecture kind of like integrated within the whole ship. This definitely depends on what kind of ship you're making, right? Yeah, this stuff is not easy, but this already like making it less modular and just having something interesting there already helps a lot. Yeah, again, I'm not good at this either. This is super hard to do. I'll see. So what I would recommend, instead of me just looking at like even, I don't know, shittier designs that I did, is I would honestly have a look at those channels. Look at there's some beautiful concept artists that do like this like semi-futuristic sci-fi inspiration, right? And Slate is bringing up a good point as well. Like if you know, there's this common saying that form follows functionality, right? I think that's like the design saying, is that you need to know the functionality first, and then the shapes that we designed around it are informed by the functionality of the space, right? So that's where I would start, and then see what you want to do with that. And I was kind of hinting at that like a couple of weeks ago, but I just explained it really badly, I think. So yeah, in short, function. Number 2, then we can add the design on top of that. So yeah, that's what I would do. Figure out the function, then do the design on top of it. Because again, like the workflows that you're using and like the versatility that you're building into your pipeline is really good. So that also allows you some like leeway in the design too, right? Like even just looking at this, right? Like these shapes, super expressive, right? And even just having like little bits of verticality in there as well. Super cool. You still need to try to get away from just like the modular feel, right? Like kind of breaking up some areas that you have like sort of like slight asymmetry. And what that might mean is that, oh, this side is now going to have like a pipe that kind of follows the same thing, right? But it's just enough to kind of give it like a unique feel. That's so tiny. Right. It was a whole bunch of me talking. Let me see. Do I still have? I do have it. I just don't know where I stored it. That's the issue. I got my project graveyard. Was that 21? No. 2019. Oh my god. What is that? Okay. Bad. Come on, never mind. I'm not gonna look for it now. Yeah. Cool. I would literally start here, right? Like the same thing that I was doing. Like, okay. Functionality, look for some cool designs, and just like find a bunch of references, right? Simple advice, but I mean, it's gonna be yeah, the proof is gonna be in the pudding, you know? Thanks for the feedback. No worries, no worries. It was also lovely to chat with you as well, David. I hope that I can make some more time so that we can hang out more in the future as well. Yeah, say best of luck, and yeah, go wild, you know? I'm looking forward to seeing more updates to this. Got a question in the chat as well. Jack Roy is asking, how do I get a job in a place like Naughty Dog or Creative Assembly as an environment artist? What would be if you want to get a job there, work your ass off. That would be step number 1. What would be the first 2 steps to get there? If you're really starting from like all the way to the beginning, get Blender and start modeling. That would be like the first step. We talked about it a couple times already, which is fine, right? I don't mind it. It's a quick overview would be get introduced to like all the programs, right? Like, well, start small, Blender, start modeling, explore UV unwrapping, then explore baking within Substance Painter, texturing, getting it into an engine. That by itself is going to be like a couple of months of work, right? Because you're learning a bunch of stuff too. But that's where I would start. Start with getting Blender, start with modeling, getting used to that first. Make sure they are hiring as well. Well, here's the thing, right? Like by the time that you might be in a position to get hired, who knows what has happened, right? So my general advice would be never to, well, this is the thing that you're going to find as well. It's fine to have a company that you can use as like an aspirational goal to work towards, right? Completely fine. However, don't build everything towards that singular company. Give yourself some wiggle room, keep some flexibility. But that is, if you're just starting out, that is so far away that I wouldn't even think about it, because you don't know what's going to happen. I'll give you an example, right? So when I got started as an artist, remember, I wanted to start as like a concept artist and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to work on the next Fallout game. By the time that I got into the industry and I was in a position to go and work for Bethesda potentially, right? They just launched Fallout 76. And yeah, I kind of just didn't want to work on it anymore. It's probably like a very sour perspective on the whole thing, but everything is constantly in flux. So latching on to like one thing is good to give you a goal, but expect that stuff is going to change. Last one for today, and we're a little bit over time as well. But Raj is jumping in, giving some good feedback as well to Plowman. Was hoping to get some feedback on whether or not the shots work well. Oh wait, I skipped ahead. I also made a bark texture for the money tree and added an RGB mask so I can get some ambient occlusion and other color variation at the bottom of the root. I'd love to get some feedback on it. Honestly, I don't care about the individual texture by itself, right? Because this is what matters. And the reason why I say that is, you know, you can, right now, it looks decent, right? It looks decent, it looks serviceable, it looks good for use, right? And for the majority of things, like, that's what you need, right? Like, that's all you need to have in your scene. Because once we then start adding it onto like an asset and we have it like blending with like a bunch of other stuff, this looks good, right? Like this looks good. Just this by itself, if you wanted to, I don't know, let's say you wanted to showcase it by itself on your portfolio and needs to stand alone, then I would do a lot more work on it, but I don't think that's necessary. Because it's serviceable now and it looks good in relationship to the rest of it, right? And that's kind of all that matters. So yeah, the plant itself looks really good. The only thing that I would say, and it's not necessarily to do with the material, but it's about the leaf material. It looks really saturated compared to the rest of the scene. So that might be interesting to kind of balance out, because the rest of it kind of is like a bit more muted. And then this plant is just like, it's bright green. So maybe in relationship to like everything else in the scene, it's just a little bit too bright. But that's about like it's like the small thing that I can add here. I think I'm getting close to getting this environment done. I'll work on presentation shots and maybe some dust and VFX particles. I'll add some decals on the room signs and the floor number. Nice. That's good. And then you have a video as well. Yeah, honestly, for this kind of stuff, I would go into the actual texture inside of Unreal and just turn down the saturation. It's a small tweak. You don't have to go back even. So let me have a look at this here. There was some good feedback from Raj already. I do agree with Raj. Like it's long, right? It's lengthy, and like I wouldn't necessarily mind that it's so long if we're getting to see something new, right? If you show me like a new angle or it's like different enough from the main one, then I'm totally fine with sitting through like a longer cinematic. But you need to keep the engagement, right? Because like it's slow, it's panning, and it's just it is nice to look at it. But then we transition to the second shot, which is basically just the same shot, just slightly different angle. So I really look at things from like, okay, how does it keep my engagement, right? Like how are you showing me like enough new stuff that it warrants like another camera angle? Because I think this one is cool, where you kind of like tease at like, oh, we're going into the classroom. That's cool. But yeah, other than that, I think the cinematic can be like way shortened. I would even opt for, okay, this is gonna go counter to what I was saying before. Well, no, we can't even do that. What I would consider is maybe doing like a longer cinematic, but potentially play with different lighting scenarios where you maybe have like a time of day that changes, or maybe we have a transition between night and dark, like light and dark, something like that. And then I don't mind that we just see a shot where we're going through time. But yeah, that depends on what you want to do. To be honest, I did the second shot only to showcase the plant a little bit more. Well, see, that's one of those things where, and this happens a lot, right? I used to do that as well, where you don't necessarily want to make a cinematic that is just purely to showcase like all the cool stuff that you've done, because no one, I mean, this is gonna sound so harsh, right? No one else that's viewing it cares about like the amount of time that you put into that plant, right? I know it sounds harsh, but that is the reality of it, right? Where sometimes what we tend to do, and we do this with, I'll give another example, right, to make it really clear. I have seen a lot of cases where people will intentionally make their scene lighter than it needs to be. So that means that they're not going for like a moody lighting, and they're not going for like as big of an impact when it comes to the storytelling, just because they have some really cool assets that are kind of hidden away, right? So what you're doing then is you're sacrificing the storytelling and the broader vision of your scene just to showcase that you made this really cool thing, right? It's not as egregious in this example, but make sure that you can separate the two. If you do want to do those like those shots where you show off the plant, right? I think that could be cool, but do something that showcases the plant from like a technical aspect and add that in the breakdown then. So let's say you have like a rotating camera, right? Like let's imagine that the plant is in the middle of your hallway, and then you have like the slow panning camera, and you just record like 3 separate videos in only base color, only roughness, wireframe, all that kind of stuff, and you stitch them together in like a video editing program, right? So you basically go from like the full thing as you're slowly like rotating you go from the full thing, you switch to like all your different color maps, let's say base color, roughness, whatever you want to do, and then your wireframe on top of it. And that could be a cool way to showcase like a breakdown while also showcasing like this cool plant that you did, right? So that we still have like the separation between like, oh, I want to show this cool stuff. You can still do that. You can still put like that presentation time into it, just in purpose of that presentation, right? But yeah, this scene looks really cool. Really cool. I think, yeah, we're getting close to the end of this scene, right? It's looking real nice. Yeah, Raj had like a lot of good comment. He's a cinematic artist by trade as well. So when it comes to cinematics, trust him over me. Okay, I think that was it from my side as well. So let's switch it on over. Yeah, thank you so much for participating as well, Plamen. I forgot to say that as well. The scene is looking freaking awesome. Yeah. Some dirt decals would be cool too, saying Leo was saying. Yeah, that's true. But that was still, let's see, maybe some dust, VFX particles, some dirt decals. It kind of depends on how dirty they want to make it, right? It seems like this is more like a clean interpretation of a scene. So yeah, it's not a bad shout. Not a bad suggestion. In that case, is it worth it for me to do a cinematic shot? Because I started on this environment, I didn't really consider adding more shots. You don't need to. No, you don't need to. Like, So here's the thing that I was thinking as well, but I didn't say anything about it. Sometimes a cinematic still shot works really well when you have a lot of things moving in the scene, right? So let's say you have like a slow pan and it can almost be like one of these like lo-fi backgrounds, right? That has like a lot of stuff moving and it has like a bunch of interesting things happening. But that is also not really the case in your scene, which is not bad, right? It's just different. So that means that you're just more limited when it comes to cinematic opportunities. So I think it's a good question to ask. I would say, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessarily worth it to do a cinematic shot. And yeah, just keep it to still images and then go ham with the presentation and make some really cool presentation shots. Because people also really love those. Cool. As always, I try to do. I will be putting all these overpaints and all the references and all that kind of stuff that I added on top of the images. I will add that to your individual threads for all the people that participated. And yeah, that's it for this round of Whip Wednesday. So for all the people that were asking questions, thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. We had some really good conversations. So yeah, appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for asking the questions. Thanks for being here. If you want to become a member and get your work feedback as well live on stream, feel free to join us in the description down below and become a member of our lovely community. With that being said, have a nice evening all, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.